Chris Lee, Blake Lovell, Max Barr of Southeastern 14 here to preview 2 Wednesday night basketball games on the night of Wednesday, January the 18th. Both of these are on the SEC network. We're going to talk about Ole Miss's trip to LSU, followed by Auburn's trip to our home base, at least 2 of the 3 of us, in Nashville to face Vandy. We will start with Ole Miss because it's the first game. The Rebels, according to our computer model, we don't have lines as we've done this. This is fascinating. BPI has got LSU favored by 3. Bart Torvik has got Ole Miss favored by 1/10 of a point. Ken Pomeroy has LSU favored by 2 points. Average that up. LSU is a 1.7% favorite with a 56% chance of winning. Now, look, I always say this. Computers have factored in the season so far. A lot of that season has included Ole Miss not having 2 key players. We'll dive into that if we choose. So anyway, there is the lay of the land as we get into this game. Our prediction is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. With NFL playoffs here and the NBA season in full swing, BetOnline has you covered with all the up-to-the-second odds, news, and scores with traditional odds, lines, trends, and info. On both desktop and mobile, you can access the world's best wagering information anytime. Head there today to get in on the action, see the updated odds. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online where the game starts. Well, of course, when we talk the Ole Miss Rebels, we start with our resident Ole Miss hype man, Max Barr. Max, have at it, my man.
I like how we all have our assigned hype teams. So with this game, it's interesting because I like how you brought that up, Chris, about how what the computers are representing for both teams is probably not the right representation because both teams got some 2-time transfers. So just looking at the past few games, looking at SEC play here, obviously the thing that we've been dogging on Ole Miss for has been the rebounding. They just have not been able to defensive rebound, and that's something that LSU has really done well. Is rebound. I think they out rebounded A&M, which is near impossible to do. So I definitely think that, especially being at home and all that energy with the crowd, some offensive rebounding and extended possessions are going to be huge for LSU in this one. But some of that LSU rebounding is because LSU has not been able to shoot the ball. They're shooting under 30% from 3 in their 3 SEC games, and they've taken the second least amount of threes out of the SEC team. So they're not shooting it that well, and they're not shooting it very often. A lot of their offense is coming in the paint. Well, that plays right into Ole Miss's defensive strength with, obviously, Jamarian Sharp just breaking the school record for blocks and Musa Cisse and all that rim protection they have. So it's going to be a little bit testy for the LSU offense. I think their weakness plays right into the strength of the Ole Miss defense. And also, remember how much I was talking about Jalen Cook? I just giving him the praises. He struggled a little bit in the past 3 games. Only 4 assists to 11 turnovers in SEC play. This is a feisty Ole Miss defense that likes to get their hands on a lot of balls, especially Matt Morrell. Matt Morrell, I think he has 5 steals in the past 2 games. He has just been phenomenal. So there's advantages for both teams in different areas. I think the computers are kind of representing that with these close spreads. This one's going to be interesting. What are you seeing here, Blake?
Well, the computers, we all love them. They always get things right.
Here it comes.
They're always on the money here. Maybe they know something we don't about this game, because I was a little bit surprised to see that LSU would be favored potentially in this game. I'm curious to see what the betting numbers are going to look like for this one. Maybe Max has a better idea than I do of what the spread could be. And just quickly, Kentucky fans, Mississippi State fans, we did your conversation in another video. So if you're looking for that game, just keep in mind, we went kind of long on that one. So we put that one in a separate video so you can find it here on the channel. But as for this one, it's interesting because LSU, I think, is better than probably the numbers would suggest because they have gotten Jalen Cook back, even though, like Max said, as always, I think there's some ups and downs a little bit. Didn't have his best game against Auburn, but a lot of players don't necessarily have their best game on the road playing a team like Auburn. So, Jordan Wright's been pretty steady. I did consider him as one of my starting 5 on this week's weekly fantasy game here at Southeastern 14.
Chris and I have a fantasy player in this one.
Yeah.
Who's got Morrell? Max has got Morrell. Who's got Flanagan? Chris got Flanagan?
Chris has Flanagan.
Okay. Well, hopefully those two guys have just horrendous basketball games. But so for those of you who don't know the context, we started a weekly fantasy game this week. We all draft 5 players.
Highly competitive.
It's a very highly competitive thing. So I'm not rooting against
to the point that
players.
People might rig the draft.
Just because I have the best team, I don't think we should debate that, too much in this prediction. But again, I think Matthew Morrell's great. I think Alan Flanagan is great. I just don't need them to outscore my team this week. So that's all I'm asking for here. LSU, you're going to need to play some D. But that is kind of been the theme, and that leads me into the LSU defensive thing because they're forcing turnovers. They're playing much better defensively this year, and I think it's something that will help them have a really good shot in this game. I'm joking about the computers to a certain extent. Like I do think these two teams at full strength now, there are some similarities in terms of I think where they are in the pecking order. And so it makes for an interesting matchup here. A little concerned with LSU. And I know some of those turnover numbers were without Jalen Cook, but I still think that could be the key here for Ole Miss is just to force the turnovers, use that aggressive type of style. And see if maybe that's the catalyst to what will likely be a close victory. I'd be surprised if either one of these teams pull away. But yeah, it's an interesting setup between these two teams because I think there's a lot of similarities in certain areas, but wild to believe LSU has kind of been the superior defensive team to this point. So,
all right, picks, gentlemen. Ole Miss is a different team with all its parts. Having those 2 shot blockers in the middle is something that even I think the best teams in college basketball are going to have trouble contending with. I'm a big Alan Flanagan guy. He's one of the more versatile and older players in this league. That said, I've watched LSU. Max, with Jalen Cook, I think this is a different team. He and Jordan Wright play very well off each other. I keep waiting for LSU, and it was kind of touch and go around the start of the calendar year as the pages flipped over. I thought this is a team I could see finishing 13th, maybe 14th if things didn't go well. Then came that A&M game on the road where LSU showed up, didn't go away. LSU beats Vandy. We thought LSU was going to go away against Auburn. It was down 28. LSU makes a 21-2 run, comes back. You know how you do that? Veteran, experienced guards who know what they're doing, who played a lot of ball at a major college level. Here's the other thing, guys. What happens in the SEC? It is tough to win on the road. And I get that some of this is incomplete as it pertains to Ole Miss, but foul rate, if I can find this here, Ole Miss has got a little bit of an issue with that and experience. Both these teams are pretty experienced, but I go back to depth and foul trouble in the SEC. LSU is 21st in the country in bench minutes. Ole Miss 300. Ole Miss is 300. Again, that's going to change with the roster composition changing, guys getting added. But I don't know. I just think I like the way LSU has played. That team's been a little bit better than I thought. Ole Miss is kind of due to lose one. And the way that LSU has hung in there, I'm going to go with LSU here. And if it was Oxford, I'd take Ole Miss, but it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a close game. I don't think there's a clear argument either way. I'm not very, but I am concerned with the Ole Miss rebounding with how well that LSU has been able to just, I mean, geez, those numbers against Texas A&M are pretty jarring. They did a phenomenal job on the glass. Ole Miss is going to have to make some shots. The difference here, though, I think, this isn't Tennessee's defense. They're not going to be taken out of every action they're trying to run. And I really think that Vandy game for Ole Miss, where they hold Vandy to 56 points, the best team defensive performance of the year so far for Ole Miss. I think that's the momentum they needed coming into their next road game. The bad LSU shooting mixed with the Ole Miss rim protection, I'm going to go with Ole Miss here. But like you said, Chris, I'm glad you mentioned it. It is brutally hard to win on the road, and this is no guarantee, but I'm going Ole Miss.
Surprise, surprise. Max Barr picking the Ole Miss Rebels.
Hey, I didn't pick them against Florida.
A basketball game on the road in the SEC. How could you do such a thing, Max? How could you? This is the SEC. Picking a team to win on the road is a recipe for failure. However, this is the Ole Miss Rebels. They're 15-1. I just think that they've been a better team to this point. I think they're the better team overall. You can bring up the bench numbers, the depth numbers, all you want. Matthew Morrell, Alan Flanagan, just to piss me off, are going to have two of the best games of their entire career to somehow lead you two guys to fantasy success this week at Southeastern 14. I just think Ole Miss, again, I feel like love what Jordan Wright's doing. I think Jalen Cook could have a big game here. I'm curious to see who else steps up for LSU. We've seen that, various guys can do that at times. This will be a close game. I understand why the computers maybe like LSU a little more in this one, but I don't know. This is the same Ole Miss team that outside of that Tennessee game, they just found ways to win and win and win again. A lot of close games. I expect this to be a close game. I give a slight edge to the Rebels here in this one. So give me the Ole Miss Rebels on the road.
And then we have Auburn Vandy.
Woo.
Give me the Auburn Tigers on the road in the SEC.
Well, look, I don't think our analysis on this is going to be lengthy and in depth because I think we all know where this is going. But I do think this part is important. Every now and then you have a team, and we think there's a lot of parity in the league, but every now and then you have a team that just rips through the league like a chainsaw. Now, look, it would be premature to say Auburn is that team, but since that December 3rd loss at Appalachian State, Auburn has won 9 in a row. That, as of Tuesday morning, according to Ken Palm, is the nation's 7th longest active win streak. In those games, no team has come within single digits of Auburn. Closest that anybody has come, Texas A&M loses to Auburn by 11. Now granted, not the toughest of schedules. I'm not sure there's an NCAA tournament team in there other than Texas A&M, but it is what it is. Last week, what was it? You had 8 of the top 10 teams in the AP lost to unranked teams, and Houston did it twice. So that's the world we live in. Auburn, in the meantime, is flattening everything. It's got an SEC Player of the Year candidate in Janai Broome. It is, as Blake called it, the deepest team in the country, and I don't think he's wrong. Auburn's got 10 guys who have played every game this year and are averaging 15 minutes or more, and they're all good. You don't see that often. And then we got Vandy. Losers of 3 in a row, losers of 9 of its last 11. If you heard Jerry Stackhouse's post-game radio clip, he is starting to point the finger. And he's not entirely wrong, but we can't get transfers in. And he's not entirely wrong, although his best player is a transfer in Ezra Mannion. So we got that. What did Jerry Stackhouse do? He went and started 2 freshmen who aren't very good right now, and he gave them season-high minutes, 29 for one, 23 for the other. You can see the groundwork Jerry Stackhouse is laying as fans start to get impatient, want him gone. He's not very popular. We know this. We're in the Nashville area with that fan base right now. Look, I see a team in Auburn that's just much deeper. It's much better. I see a coach who is starting to say, hey, look, I'm going to play my young guys because that's the future. His young guys aren't very good outside of Jason Herrera Torres. This could be a game that goes off the rails quickly, Blake.
Normally I would agree with you, but this game is being played at the infamous Memorial Gymnasium in Nashville. And do you want to know one of the wildest stats you will find? Do you want to know the last time the Auburn Tigers won at Memorial Gym in Nashville by more than 11 points? Do you know how many times they've done this?
Probably never.
So they beat Vanderbilt in 2018-19, 64-53. Outside of that game, that is the only instance they have won by double digits at Memorial Gym since, I am still scrolling here, 1990. So just keep that in mind. If you thought Alabama had the, horrors of Memorial Gym in their nightmares, the Auburn Tigers at times have also had that. Of course, they lost there last year, 67-65, 73-67 in 2021. I mentioned the 64-53 game in 2019. Before that, it was a long losing streak against the Vanderbilt Commodores that went from 2017 all the way back to 2007, a decade-long losing streak for the Auburn Tigers overall in the series. But they've only won at Memorial Gym. They've won 2 of the last, I don't know how many meetings. Like I said, it's been a long time. If you just take the ones that I mentioned, 2021, 2019, those were the only 2 wins since all the way back in, 1990. So just saying, there is some history to suggest that Vanderbilt against teams from the state of Alabama always seem to kind of be a thorn in the side of these teams. However, if you look at kind of where these 2 teams are at, the number 1 team in our power rankings this week, the number 14 team in our power rankings this week, and it feels like that is even wider than that 1 through 14. Like, it feels much wider than that based on how these 2 teams have played. So matchup wise, we could break this down every single way you wanted to. Auburn's got the advantage everywhere. I mean, and realistically, and I'm not even, trying to make light of this. Like, they have the advantage everywhere. I mean, really, if you look at the numbers, and that's why we talked about how dominant Auburn's been on both sides. Top 10 offensive, defensive efficiency. They take care of the ball. They rebound. They do everything well. And that's why we keep pointing out how good they are, is because they just don't do anything bad. So I guess maybe, Max, if you want to try to find a path here for the Commodores, I gave my path, and it would just be playing in the gym that they're playing in and the historical trends. But based on what we've seen to this point, it's hard to find a lot in Vanderbilt's favor here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I usually like to look at numbers and find different trends. Like, okay, well, this number is off because when they have this player that was usually out, they're actually not doing this good. Forget it with this game. Auburn is going to have the edge on the numbers everywhere. One thing that's crazy, you brought up the crazy stat with the history at Memorial Gym. Evan Maya does some good analytics, good player analytics. He has lineup ratings. Okay, how efficient is your 5-man lineup? With 5-man lineups in the whole, all across all Division I, minimum of 75 possessions on the court. Auburn's reserve group, their 5 backup group of Katie Johnson, Trey Donaldson, Baker Mazzara, Chaney Johnson, and Dylan Cardwell, their 5 backups have the number one overall efficiency of any 5-man lineup in the nation by a good margin. Number 2 is FAU starters, and they're about 8 points of efficiency lower. The backups, and that's going to be huge in this game because we have a Vanderbilt team that is just searching for something. They're basically starting bench players now. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know where you want me to go with this one. Auburn's going to have the edge in every single stat. It's basically, if you want a path for Vandy, it's They're in that magical gym, and you're going to need Auburn to miss a bunch of shots. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what else I can say. There's not much for me to say here.
Well, two things to finish here. You touched on something that lineup combination. I don't know if you saw Aiden Holloway's quote after the LSU game. He said, "Hey, Chad Baker-Bazar and that group won us the game."
Yeah.
So those guys came in. That's what won the game. That bench is Vanderbilt's not very deep either. Number two, Blake Lovell. You're a resident stat guy here. I'm gonna throw out a stat and you can give us what's in your backyard right now.
Oh boy. Well, I think you're referring to snow.
Yes.
And there will be a lot of snow still here on Wednesday night.
Yes, because it's not going to get above freezing. And oh, by the way, we got more snow coming on Thursday. Blake's got 9 inches of snow in his backyard. I got 6 in mine. The roads are not going to be clearing here in the Nashville area for a while. I think that's going to keep the crowd down. Even so, I think Auburn might put more people in that gym than Vanderbilt under normal circumstances. That might keep the visiting crowd down long.
I think there's been more than snow at play over the past several years at Memorial Gym for keeping the crowd down. But please continue.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. I don't think that the home court advantage that you and I grew up seeing them have, it's dead. You're going to see them get outnumbered in that gym by other teams' fans. Again, it may not happen this week because of the snow, but I don't think their fans are looking for a reason not to show up to. I don't know. To me, when you start throwing in history at Memorial Gym, now we say that Alabama just about ran into it.
Auburn lost there last year. I mean, and even in 20. So hold on. Even if you go back, like I said, if you go back to, which I think this one's probably a little deceiving because remember this was the Auburn team in 2021. They went 13-14. So keep that in mind. But they still won by 7 there. And then 2018-19, Auburn won 6. It's how the games have played out. Like the 2018-19 team, remember, that's the team that went to the Final Four. They won 64-53, one of their worst offensive outputs of the season. So,
Well, and Auburn, Vanderbilt did win that game last year, but that's also right when Vanderbilt had gone on the heater and had won 4 in a row. And just every close game was going its way. I just think the circumstances were a lot different. But as you pointed out, I thought Alabama would win that one by as many points it wanted to a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't happen. So who knows? Any parting thoughts, gentlemen? I'll start with Blake.
No, I'm going to pick Auburn. So I just think it may be closer than we think, but all the data says it shouldn't be. But we'll see. Again, we've seen that with Alabama, but Auburn's just so dominant. It's hard not to expect them to win by double digits against anybody right now, especially the team that's to this level that just has not played well. So,
yeah, I'm going to be going Auburn, and I will be rooting for an immaculate performance from Janai Broome because he's on my fantasy team. If you guys are not aware, go follow our Twitter at 14 Southeastern. This is our first week of our SEC weekly fantasy. And based on the votes, Blake's Monstars have a 57% chance of taking this one opposed to Chris's 20 and my 22. So
I'm up to 20.
Yeah, you're up to 20.5 and I'm at 22.7, but we're not looking good against Blake's 56.8. So uphill battle here.
I did rig the vote partially in my favor by voting for myself, but I'll be honest, I don't even buy it. you got to put a vote of confidence in your guys just so you let them know you believe in them.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I did the same. So,
yeah, we've stuffed the ballot box a little bit here at Southeastern 14. Blake has a look of confidence.
I'm a man of few words when it comes to the Monstars. We just take care of business on the court.
Oh my
they
gosh.
do. Well, We will be watching closely. We will be back on Thursday morning to break down whatever happened on Wednesday night. As Blake said, we have previewed Kentucky and Mississippi State in a separate video. For Blake Lovell, for Max Barr, I'm Chris Lee. This is Southeastern 14 presented by BetOnline.